If you enter the year without understanding what the 6th of January truly means, you might pray, make plans, and ask for blessings. But you'll start the year misaligned. Because this day wasn't placed on the calendar by chance. On the 6th of January, the church doesn't celebrate a journey. It celebrates an encounter. The wise men weren't transformed because they walked far, nor because they offered gifts. They were transformed because they recognized God where they didn't expect to find him. And whoever understands the Epiphany never enters the year the same way again. The 6th of January is one of the deepest days in the Christian calendar, and at the same time, one of the most misunderstood. For many, it's just the end of the celebrations, the moment to put away the nativity scene and return to routine. But the church teaches something far greater. Epiphany means manifestation. It's the day when God manifests himself to the world, not just to a specific people, not just to those who already believed, but to everyone who seeks him with sincerity. The wise men didn't belong to the chosen people. They didn't know the law like the doctors of Israel, yet they were led to Christ. This reveals something essential. God allows himself to be found by those who truly seek him. The Epiphany shows us that God doesn't reveal himself to the hurried, nor to the distracted, nor to those who think they have it all figured out. He reveals himself to those who persevere, even when they don't fully understand the path. If you want God to manifest himself in your life this year, write in the comments, "Lord, show yourself to me." Not as an automatic phrase, but as an inner decision. The wise men represent humanity in search. They symbolize the deep desire to understand life's meaning. They studied the signs, followed the light, crossed through uncertainties. But the real test wasn't the journey, it was the encounter. When we talk about Epiphany, we're not talking about just another date on the calendar. We're talking about something that touches the very core of being human. Every person, at some point, asks, "Where is God? How can I find him?" The word Epiphany means revelation, something hidden that suddenly becomes visible. Think about those moments when something finally made sense. You'd been struggling, and then suddenly, clarity came. That feeling of recognition is a glimpse of what Epiphany means on a deeper level. Here's what makes the Epiphany remarkable. God didn't reveal himself to the religious experts first, not to the priests in Jerusalem, not to the scholars who spent their lives studying scripture. He revealed himself to foreigners who studied the stars and followed what little light they had. The wise men weren't born into faith. They weren't raised in the temple. What they had was hunger, the humility to follow a sign they didn't fully understand, the courage to leave everything familiar, trusting that what they sought was real. Most people miss the point about the 6th of January. They think it's about celebrating wise men who brought gifts 2,000 years ago. But look deeper. The Epiphany isn't just about then. It's about now. About God manifesting himself today in your life in ways you might not expect. How many times have you prayed for a sign, asked God to show you the way, to give clarity? And how many times did you miss it because it didn't come as expected? You were looking for something dramatic. Meanwhile, he was already there, speaking in silence, present in the ordinary. Here's the hard truth. God doesn't adjust his revelation to match our expectations. The wise men could have missed everything. They could have looked at the situation and decided they'd made a mistake. They could have let expectations blind them to what was actually there. But they didn't. That's the difference between those who find God and those who search without seeing. God is always revealing himself. The question isn't whether he's there. The question is whether we're willing to see. Padre Pio understood this. He knew that the greatest obstacle to encountering God isn't distance. It's presumption, the assumption that we've got it figured out. Many come to prayer with their own agenda, asking God to bless their plans rather than seeking His. That's not seeking, that's asking for approval. The wise men came with open hearts, ready to be surprised, ready to encounter something beyond understanding. That's why they recognized the child, not because they were smarter, because they were humble enough to let God be God. Let's be honest about what the wise men expected. These were educated men, advisors to kings. They were following a star that announced the birth of a king. When you're looking for royalty, you expect palaces, guards, ceremonies. You expect the world to acknowledge what you've discovered. So they went to Jerusalem first. That makes sense. If a king has been born, surely the capital would know. But when they asked, "Where is the newborn king?" they didn't get celebration. They got fear. King Herod was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Already the journey was different from what they imagined, but they persisted. The scribes pointed them toward Bethlehem, not Jerusalem, not a palace, a place so insignificant most people wouldn't think twice about it. When they finally arrived, what did they find? Not a throne room, not golden halls. They found a house, a simple dwelling. Inside, a young mother with her child. No crown, no royal court, no evidence by any worldly measure that this was someone who mattered. This is the moment that defines everything. This is where most would have walked away, where doubt would have crept in. They'd traveled all that way for this, a carpenter's family. But something happened, something beyond logic. They recognized him, not because of what they saw with their eyes, but because of what they perceived in their hearts. The scripture says they were overwhelmed with joy. They fell down. They worshipped. They offered their gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They didn't understand everything. They couldn't have known the full story, but they knew enough. They knew they were in the presence of someone far greater than appearances suggested, and that knowing changed them forever. There was a woman who spent years looking for God in expected places, conferences, books, respected teachers. She was sincere, but kept feeling empty. One evening, exhausted, she was doing dishes after a long day. Nothing special, just the ordinary task of cleaning up. And in that moment, in the silence, she felt it, a presence, peace that didn't come from her circumstances. She recognized God not in the extraordinary event she'd been waiting for, but in the ordinary moment she'd stopped resisting. That's what the wise men teach us. God doesn't always show up in ways that make sense, but when He does reveal Himself, there's a recognition that goes beyond proof. It's a knowing from somewhere deeper than the mind. The Epiphany confronts something in all of us, our need to control, our desire to have God fit into our categories, because if God can show up as a baby in a stable, where else might He be present that we're missing? What other moments might be carrying His presence that we're walking past? Padre Pio didn't waste words. When he spoke about the Epiphany, he wasn't interested in sentimental feelings. He was interested in truth. And the truth he insisted on was this: the Epiphany isn't about performing rituals. It's about recognition. He would say that many people pray, but few allow themselves to be corrected. That statement cuts to the heart of what the Epiphany reveals. Because prayer, for many of us, becomes a way of trying to convince God to agree with our plans. We come with our desires, our wishes, our carefully constructed ideas about how our lives should go. And we ask God to bless all of it. But that's not really prayer. That's negotiation. Real prayer is different. It's coming before God with empty hands and an open heart, saying, "Show me what's true, even if it challenges everything I think I know." Being willing to have your expectations overturned, your plans redirected. And that's terrifying, because what if His truth doesn't align with what we want? Padre Pio saw this constantly in the confessional. People would come with their problems, their struggles, and often what they really wanted was validation, not transformation, comfort, not correction. But he understood that true love doesn't just comfort, it also challenges. God doesn't come into our lives just to make us comfortable. He comes to make us whole. And sometimes wholeness requires breaking what's been wrongly built. Sometimes it requires letting go of what we've been clinging to. The Epiphany demonstrates this perfectly. The wise men came looking for a king. They found a child. They came expecting power. They found vulnerability. They came with their gifts. They left with something far more valuable, truth. And that truth meant they couldn't go back to their old way of thinking. Think about your own life. How many times have you asked God to bless a decision you'd already made? How many times have you prayed for guidance, but only if that guidance confirmed what you already wanted? Padre Pio would tell you that this isn't faith. Faith is what the wise men showed, following the light even when it leads somewhere unexpected, recognizing God even when he doesn't appear as anticipated, bowing down even when everything in you wants to stay in control. The saint used to say that the Epiphany is God's question to each soul. Will you accept me as I am? And that question doesn't get asked just once. It gets asked every day, in every choice, in every moment when reality doesn't match our preferences. Do we recognize his presence in difficulty? Do we see his hand in the detour? Do we trust that he knows what he's doing, even when we don't understand? If this message has touched your heart, don't let this grace end here. Discover the ebook, The Spiritual Secrets of St. Padre Pio. This material was created for those who want to deepen their faith and walk closer to God, inspired by the teachings of one of the most beloved saints. In it, you'll find powerful prayers, profound reflections, and practical guidance for living Padre Pio's spirituality in everyday life. You'll also discover real stories of miracles and conversions that strengthen faith, restore hope, and bring peace to the heart. Padre Pio taught that a faith lived with sincerity can transform everything. This ebook is an invitation for you to take a concrete step in your spiritual life. The link to access it is pinned in the comments. This is why the 6th of January is so important. It's not about adding another devotion to your list. It's about cultivating the kind of heart the wise men had, a heart humble enough to be taught, flexible enough to change direction, honest enough to admit when it's been wrong. The Gospel says it simply. Having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. Just one sentence. But that sentence carries an entire theology of transformation. The route they took home wasn't just a different road, it was a different life. You don't encounter God and stay the same. The wise men left as seekers. They returned as witnesses. They left with questions. They returned with certainty about the one thing that matters. They knew who they had found. This is what genuine encounter does. It doesn't answer every question. It doesn't remove every difficulty. But it gives you something more valuable than answers. It gives you Him. And once you truly know God is real and present, everything else shifts. Padre Pio used to say that the Christian life isn't about having it all figured out. It's about knowing where to turn when things fall apart. Not about perfect faith that never doubts, but faith that keeps returning to God even in the doubt. Let's be real about transformation. It's not always dramatic. It's not always a complete reversal in a single moment. Sometimes it's quiet, a gradual shift in how you see things, how you respond, what you prioritize. A man spent most of his life chasing success, measuring everything by achievement. He worked hard, provided well, but there was always restlessness, always something more to prove. Then, through daily prayer, through scripture, through sitting in silence when everything in him wanted to keep busy, something shifted. Over time, people noticed changes. He became more present, more patient, more interested in others than his own advancement. He couldn't point to a single moment, but he knew he wasn't the same person. He'd encountered something real, and it had quietly changed his direction. That's what returning by another way means for most of us. After we've truly encountered God, we can't just go back to life as usual, not because we're suddenly perfect, but because we've seen something that won't let us settle for less anymore. The Epiphany teaches us that God's work is both consoling and corrective. The wise men were filled with joy, but they also had to bow down, acknowledge someone far greater than themselves, adjust their entire understanding of what power means. God doesn't come just to make us comfortable. He comes to make us whole, and sometimes wholeness requires breaking what's been wrongly built, letting go of what we've been clinging to, admitting that the path we've been on isn't leading where we need to go. This is the challenge. It's not enough to admire the story of the wise men. The question is whether we're willing to do what they did. Follow the light we've been given, even when it leads somewhere we didn't plan. Recognize God where He actually is. Bow down even when it costs us our pride. Take a different route home, even when the familiar path seems easier. So here's what Padre Pio would tell you to do on the 6th of January, not as empty ritual, but as genuine encounter. First, find silence, not just quiet, but actual interior silence. Turn everything off. Sit before God without your list of requests, without your agenda. Just be there. Ask Him one question. Lord, where are you present in my life that I haven't recognized? Then listen. Really listen. Don't rush to fill the silence with words. Second, read the gospel account of the wise men slowly. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. But read it as if for the first time. Put yourself in their place. Feel the uncertainty of the journey. Experience the shock of what they found. Let the text confront your own expectations about how God should appear. Third, make an offering, not of gold or frankincense. Offer God something more costly. Offer Him one area where you've been resisting His truth, one relationship where you haven't forgiven, one ambition you've been placing before Him, one fear you've been letting control you. Name it specifically. Place it before Him like the wise men placed their gifts. Fourth, and this is crucial, ask God to show you where you need to change direction, where you've been walking a path that leads away from Him, even if it's a comfortable path, even if it's what everyone expects. Be specific. Show me what needs to change in how I treat my family. Show me what needs to change in my work. Show me what needs to change in how I spend my time. Then be prepared for the answer, because He will answer. Maybe not immediately, maybe not how you expect, but He will. Padre Pio insisted that the Epiphany isn't about what you say, it's about what you're willing to see and how you're willing to change. These actions aren't magic formulas, they're doorways, ways of opening yourself to recognize what's already there. Do them with sincerity on January 6th and watch what God reveals, not just that day, but in the weeks and months that follow. There's a reason the Epiphany comes at the beginning of the year. The Church places this feast right as we're thinking about fresh starts and new goals. And the message is clear. Before you plan your year, let God show you who He is. Here's what happens to most of us. We enter a new year with energy. We make lists, set intentions, promise ourselves this year will be different. Nothing wrong with that. But if all of that planning is built on our own understanding, if we haven't first stopped to recognize where God actually is in our lives, we're building on sand. The Epiphany offers something different, realignment. Not just enthusiasm for a fresh start, but a fundamental reorientation of how we see everything. When you begin the year by recognizing God where He reveals Himself, something changes in how you approach every decision. Think practically. You're planning your year, work, relationships, health, spiritual life. You've got ideas about what needs to change. All of that might be good, but have you asked God what He sees? Have you been still enough to let Him show you what He wants? Or are you just asking Him to bless plans you've already made? The wise men teach us differently. They didn't show up with demands. They came seeking, ready to recognize, prepared to be amazed. And because of that, they received something far greater than anything they could have planned. Padre Pio would tell people that a year lived aligned with God's will, even if it includes suffering by worldly standards, is far more fruitful than a year spent pursuing our own agenda, even if that agenda seems successful. Because success without His presence is just busyness. It might look good, it might impress others, but it doesn't satisfy the soul. So what does it mean to live the Epiphany practically? It doesn't mean you stop planning. It means you start from a different place. Instead of "what do I want?" you begin with "Lord, show yourself to me." Instead of "how can I make this year work?" you ask, "where are you calling me?" This isn't about being passive. The wise men didn't sit at home waiting for Jesus to appear. They took action. They made the journey. But their seeking was humble. They were willing to be surprised, open to finding God in ways they hadn't anticipated. That's the balance. Active faith that's also humble, determined seeking that's also flexible, planning while remaining open to His interruptions. Because sometimes the greatest blessings come through what initially feels like an interruption. The 6th of January is God's invitation. Before you rush ahead, He says, "Let me show you who I am. Let me reveal what matters. Let me reorder your priorities. Let me show you where I'm already working so you can join me." When you approach the year this way, decisions become clearer. Not easier necessarily, but clearer. You're not just trying to figure out what you want. You're trying to recognize where He's already moving and align yourself with that. You're not just chasing goals. You're pursuing the one who gives every good gift. So we come back to where we started. The Epiphany isn't just about celebrating something from 2,000 years ago. It's about what's happening now. Whether you'll recognize God where He manifests Himself, or keep waiting for Him to show up the way you've decided He should. The wise men could have missed everything. Too proud to look in a simple house. Too sophisticated to believe a poor family could be hosting the King of Kings. They could have trusted their expectations more than the light. But they didn't. They bowed down. They recognized truth, and it changed their direction forever. That's what the Epiphany offers you. Not just information, not just a beautiful story, but transformation. Real, life-altering transformation that comes from genuinely encountering God, not just having ideas about Him. And here's the beautiful part. God wants to be found. He's not hiding. He's constantly revealing Himself, constantly offering Himself. The question is never whether He's present. The question is whether we're paying attention, whether we're humble enough to recognize Him in unexpected places. Padre Pio's entire life was testimony to this truth. He lived in constant awareness of God's presence. And that awareness transformed everything. How he suffered, how he served, how he prayed, how he loved. People came from all over the world because they recognized someone who truly knew God. Not just knew about God, knew Him. That's what the Epiphany calls you to. Not to know more about God, though knowledge is good, but to know Him, to encounter Him, to let that encounter change everything. If this message has spoken to you, write in the comments, "Lord, show yourself to me." Not as an automatic phrase, but as a genuine decision. Come back to this video on the 6th of January, listen again. Enter the year with awareness. Share this with someone who's been praying but feeling lost, because maybe what they need isn't more prayers, but recognition. Maybe they need to stop looking in all the expected places and start recognizing where He already is. Before we finish, I want to ask something from you. This channel exists to share Padre Pio's wisdom, to help people encounter God more fully. But we can only continue this mission with your support. If this message touched you, if it helped you see more clearly, would you help us reach more people? Leave a like on this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you want to journey together through the teachings of the saints, subscribe to the channel and consider becoming a member. Together, we can spread this message of hope and transformation to hearts everywhere. Your support makes this possible. The wise men didn't return by the same route. They couldn't. Once you've encountered God, truly encountered Him, you can't go back. You might struggle. You might doubt. You might not always feel His presence clearly, but you know He's real. You know He's present, and that knowing changes the path forward. That's the gift of Epiphany, not certainty about every detail, not answers to every question, but certainty about the one who holds all things. The certainty that God is real, that He reveals Himself to those who seek Him, that He can be found even in unexpected places. May the light of the Epiphany illuminate your path. May it guide your choices, your relationships, your work, your rest. May you have the courage of the wise men to follow where He leads. May you have their humility to bow down when you recognize Him, and may you have their joy when you discover that the search was worth it. The wise men left their treasures with Jesus, but they didn't leave empty-handed. They left with truth, and that truth set the direction for the rest of their lives. May it be the same for you this year and every year. May you recognize God where He reveals Himself, and may that recognition transform everything.